The Duke's reluctant bride tells the love story between Isabella and the Duke while uncovering of the Duke's past and the true nature of the curse. Chapter 1. The Mysterious Invitation. The soft glow of the morning sun filtered through the lace curtains, casting intricate patterns on the polished wooden floor of Harrington Hall. Birds chirped harmoniously outside, heralding the arrival of a new day. Lady Isabella Harrington, a vision of youth and beauty, stood by the window of her elegantly appointed bedroom, lost in thought. Her auburn hair, cascading in soft curls, caught the sunlight, creating a halo around her head. She was dressed in a simple yet elegant morning gown of pale blue, which complemented her fair complexion and deep green eyes. "Isabella, darling, are you ready for breakfast?" called a gentle voice from the doorway. Turning, Isabella smiled warmly at her aunt, Lady Eleanor Harrington. Lady Eleanor, a woman of refined grace and poise, had been more of a mother to Isabella than an aunt since her parents' untimely passing. Her hair, once as vibrant as Isabella's, was now streaked with silver, but her blue eyes retained a youthful sparkle. "Yes, Aunt Eleanor, I was just admiring the garden. It looks particularly lovely this morning," Isabella replied, moving away from the window. As they descended the grand staircase, the butler, Mr. Thompson, approached with a silver tray bearing an intricately sealed envelope. "A letter for you, Lady Isabella," he announced, presenting the tray with a bow. Isabella took the envelope, noting the elegant script and the seal of black wax bearing the crest of Ravenswood Manor. Her heart skipped a beat. The Duke of Ravenswood was a figure shrouded in mystery and intrigue. It was said that he had not entertained guests at his estate for many years. Who could this be from? Isabella wondered aloud as she carefully broke the seal. Lady Eleanor looked over her niece's shoulder, her expression a mix of curiosity and caution. "Let's find out, shall we?" Isabella unfolded the parchment and began to read. "Lady Isabella Harrington, you are cordially invited to a grand ball at Ravenswood Manor, hosted by His Grace, the Duke of Ravenswood, in celebration of the spring equinox. Your presence would be greatly honoured. Yours sincerely, Alexander, Duke of Ravenswood." Isabella's eyes widened in surprise. "A ball at Ravenswood Manor? I thought the Duke never entertained." Lady Eleanor frowned slightly. "It is indeed unusual. The Duke has been reclusive ever since the tragic events surrounding Lady Rosalind." Curiosity piqued, Isabella asked, "What happened to Lady Rosalind?" "She was the Duke's fiancée," Lady Eleanor explained softly. "She disappeared under mysterious circumstances on the eve of their wedding. The Duke has lived in seclusion ever since, shunning society and refusing all invitations. This ball is quite unexpected." A sense of adventure stirred within Isabella. Perhaps it is time for him to move on and rejoin society. This invitation might be his way of seeking a fresh start. Lady Eleanor looked thoughtful. "You may be right, my dear, but do be careful. The Ravenswood estate holds many secrets, and the Duke's past is not without its shadows." Isabella nodded, her mind already racing with anticipation and curiosity about the enigmatic Duke and the secrets of Ravenswood Manor. The day of the ball arrived with a flurry of activity at Harrington Hall. Isabella's maid Mary helped her into a gown of deep emerald green, the colour accentuating her eyes and the richness of her auburn hair. The dress, with its delicate lace and satin ribbons, was the epitome of elegance, and Isabella felt every bit the noble woman she was. As the carriage made its way to Ravenswood Manor, Isabella gazed out the window, her heart pounding with excitement and a hint of trepidation. The countryside passed by in a blur of green fields and blooming flowers until the imposing silhouette of Ravenswood Manor came into view, its turrets and spires reaching towards the sky like silent sentinels. Upon arrival, Isabella and Lady Eleanor were greeted by the Duke's steward, a stern but courteous man named Mr. Harding. He led them through the grand entrance hall, where crystal chandeliers glittered like stars and the marble floors gleamed underfoot. "The Duke will be joining you shortly," Mr. Harding announced, bowing slightly before taking his leave. Isabella looked around, admiring the opulent surroundings. Her attention was drawn to a large portrait of a beautiful woman with striking features, dressed in a gown of crimson silk. The plaque beneath read, "Lady Rosalind." "She was very beautiful," Isabella whispered to Lady Eleanor. "Indeed she was," a deep voice replied from behind them. Startled, Isabella turned to see the Duke of Ravenswood standing there. Tall and imposing, with dark hair and piercing blue eyes, he exuded an air of mystery and quiet strength. His presence commanded the room, and Isabella found herself momentarily speechless. "Your Grace," she finally managed, curtsying gracefully. "Thank you for inviting us." The Duke inclined his head. "The pleasure is mine, Lady Isabella. I trust you will find the evening enjoyable." As the guests began to arrive and the grand ballroom filled with music and laughter, Isabella couldn't shake the feeling that the night held more than just a simple celebration. There was a palpable sense of anticipation in the air, as if the very walls of Ravenswood Manor whispered secrets waiting to be discovered. And as she danced with the Duke, feeling the intensity of his gaze upon her, Isabella knew that her life was about to change in ways she could never have imagined. Chapter 2. The Grand Ball. The moon hung high in the clear night sky, casting a silvery glow over Ravenswood Manor as carriages arrived one after another, delivering guests in their finest attire. The grand estate was a sight to behold, its Gothic architecture adorned with twinkling fairy lights and garlands of blooming roses. The soft strains of a string quartet drifted from the open windows, mingling with the laughter and chatter of the assembled high society. Lady Isabella Harrington stepped out of the carriage, her emerald gown shimmering under the moonlight. Beside her, Lady Eleanor Harrington adjusted her own elegant attire, her eyes scanning the surroundings with a mixture of admiration and caution. "Isabella, remember to stay close and be mindful of your surroundings," Lady Eleanor advised, her tone gentle but firm. Isabella nodded, her excitement undiminished. "Of course, Aunt Eleanor. But isn't it all so magnificent?" They ascended the marble steps and were greeted by a liveried footman who led them into the grand entrance hall. The interior of Ravenswood Manor was even more impressive than its exterior. Crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceilings, casting a warm glow over the opulent decor. Rich tapestries and oil paintings adorned the walls, while ornate mirrors reflected the splendor of the evening. As they entered the ballroom, Isabella's breath caught in her throat. The room was a vision of elegance, with its polished parquet floors, silk drapes, and tables laden with fine china and crystal. Guests in their finest gowns and tailcoats mingled, the air filled with the hum of conversation and the scent of fresh flowers. A footman approached, offering glasses of champagne. Lady Eleanor accepted two, handing one to Isabella. "To a memorable evening," she toasted, her eyes twinkling. "To a memorable evening," Isabella echoed, her gaze drifting towards the center of the room where a group of musicians played a lively waltz. It wasn't long before Isabella felt the weight of someone's gaze upon her. She turned and found herself looking into the piercing blue eyes of the Duke of Ravenswood. He was impeccably dressed in a black tailcoat, his dark hair neatly combed. There was an air of quiet authority about him, and his presence seemed to command attention without effort. "Lady Isabella," he greeted, his voice deep and resonant. "May I have the honor of this dance?" Isabella's heart fluttered, and she felt a slight blush rise to her cheeks. "Of course, Your Grace," she replied, curtsying gracefully. As they moved to the center of the ballroom, the other guests parted to give them space. The musicians began a new waltz, and the Duke took Isabella's hand, leading her in a graceful dance. She found herself captivated by his intense gaze and the way he effortlessly guided her across the floor. "You dance beautifully, Lady Isabella," the Duke remarked, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of his lips. "Thank you, Your Grace. You are a wonderful partner," Isabella responded, her voice steady despite the rapid beating of her heart. As they danced, Isabella couldn't help but notice the curious glances and whispers from the other guests. It was clear that the Duke's interest in her had not gone unnoticed. She felt a mix of pride and uncertainty, wondering what lay behind the Duke's enigmatic exterior. The dance came to an end, and the Duke escorted Isabella to a quiet corner of the ballroom. "I hope you are enjoying the evening," he said, his tone sincere. "Very much so, Your Grace. Ravenswood Manor is truly magnificent," Isabella replied. The Duke nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I am pleased to hear that. It has been too long since these halls were filled with such joy." Before Isabella could respond, a shadow fell over them. She turned to see a tall, dark-haired man with a stern expression. His eyes were sharp and calculating, and there was something unsettling about his presence. "Good evening, Lady Isabella," the stranger said, bowing slightly. "I am Lord Sebastian Blackwood. May I have a word?" Isabella glanced at the Duke, who gave a nearly imperceptible nod. Reluctantly, she excused herself and followed Lord Blackwood to a quieter part of the room. "I could not help but notice your acquaintance with the Duke," Lord Blackwood began, his voice low and conspiratorial. "You seem to have captured his attention." "I have only just met His Grace," Isabella replied cautiously. "Why do you ask, Lord Blackwood?" He leaned closer, his eyes narrowing. "The Duke is not what he seems, Lady Isabella. There are dark secrets hidden within these walls, and it would be wise for you to remain cautious." Isabella's heart pounded in her chest. "What do you mean?" "Ask yourself why the Duke has remained a recluse for so long," Lord Blackwood said, his voice barely above a whisper. "There are rumors, whispers of a tragedy that has left him scarred. Be careful, Lady Isabella. Not everything here is as it appears." With that, he turned and melted back into the crowd, leaving Isabella with a sense of unease. She looked around, seeking out Lady Eleanor, but her aunt was engaged in conversation with a group of ladies. Isabella's gaze then returned to the Duke, who was now speaking with another guest. Determined to uncover the truth, Isabella resolved to tread carefully. The allure of the grand ball and the mystery surrounding the Duke of Ravenswood had drawn her in, but the warning from Lord Blackwood echoed in her mind. As the night continued, Isabella remained vigilant, her curiosity tempered by caution. She danced with other guests and engaged in polite conversation, but her thoughts continually drifted back to the enigmatic Duke and the dark secrets that seemed to linger in the shadows of Ravenswood Manor. And as the final waltz played and the guests began to depart, Isabella couldn't shake the feeling that this night was only the beginning of a much larger story, one that would unravel the mysteries of the past and change the course of her future. Chapter 3: Secrets Unveiled. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the tall windows of Ravenswood Manor, casting a warm glow on the richly decorated halls. The guests had departed, leaving the estate quiet and serene. Lady Isabella Harrington awoke with a mixture of anticipation and curiosity. The events of the previous night, particularly the cryptic warning from Lord Blackwood, lingered in her mind. After a leisurely breakfast with Lady Eleanor in the sunlit dining room, Isabella decided to explore the manor. She wandered through the elegant corridors, admiring the fine art and intricate tapestries that adorned the walls. Her exploration led her to the manor's extensive library, a grand room filled with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and plush leather chairs. As she perused the shelves, her fingers brushed against a particular volume that seemed slightly out of place. Intrigued, she pulled the book free, revealing a hidden compartment behind it. Inside, she found a bundle of old letters tied with a faded ribbon. Isabella glanced around, ensuring she was alone, before carefully untying the ribbon and reading the first letter. The letter was addressed to the Duke of Ravenswood and signed by Lady Rosalind. It spoke of their love and plans for the future, but there was an underlying tone of urgency and fear. "My dearest Alexander, I fear there are forces at work that seek to tear us apart. Trust no one, for our love is the greatest threat to those who wish to see us suffer. I pray that we can overcome these trials and find happiness together. Yours eternally, Rosalind." Isabella's heart ached for the love and despair conveyed in the letter. She carefully returned the letters to their hiding place, her mind racing with questions. What had happened to Lady Rosalind, and who were the forces she had feared? Determined to uncover more, Isabella continued her exploration, venturing into the manor's gardens. The rose garden, in particular, was a place of stunning beauty. Roses of every colour imaginable bloomed in perfect harmony, their fragrance filling the air. It was here that she found the Duke, tending to the flowers with a look of quiet contemplation. "Good morning, Your Grace," Isabella greeted, her voice soft. The Duke looked up, a hint of surprise in his eyes. "Good morning, Lady Isabella. I did not expect to see you so early." "I was exploring the manor and couldn't resist the allure of this beautiful garden," she replied, stepping closer to admire the roses. "They are truly magnificent." The Duke smiled faintly. These roses were Lady Rosalind's favourite. She spent many hours here, tending to them with great care. Isabella hesitated, then decided to broach the subject that had been on her mind since she found the letters. "Your Grace, may I ask about Lady Rosalind? I have heard whispers but know very little." The Duke's expression darkened slightly, but he nodded. "Rosalind was my betrothed. We were deeply in love and planned to marry, but she disappeared shortly before our wedding day. Despite extensive searches, she was never found. Her loss was a devastating blow, and I have lived with the pain and mystery of her disappearance ever since." Isabella's heart went out to him. "I am so sorry, Your Grace. It must be incredibly difficult to live with such uncertainty." The Duke looked at her, his blue eyes filled with a mix of sorrow and gratitude. "It is, but your presence here has brought a sense of lightness I have not felt in years. You remind me of Rosalind in many ways, yet you are uniquely yourself." They continued to walk through the garden, sharing stories and enjoying each other's company. Isabella felt a growing connection with the Duke, a bond that seemed to deepen with each passing moment. As they reached a secluded corner of the garden, the Duke paused and turned to her. "Lady Isabella, there is something about you that gives me hope," he said softly. "Hope that perhaps the shadows of the past can be dispelled." Isabella met his gaze, her heart pounding. "I feel the same, Your Grace. There is a strength in you that I admire, and I believe together we can uncover the truth." Their hands brushed, and the touch sent a shiver through Isabella. She realized then that her feelings for the Duke were no longer just curiosity and admiration. They were growing into something much deeper. Over the following days, Isabella and the Duke spent more time together, often in the rose garden or the hidden library. they continued to piece together the mystery of Lady Rosalind's disappearance, finding clues in old letters and journals. Isabella's compassion and determination seemed to draw the Duke out of his shell, and their shared moments grew more intimate. One evening, as the sun set and the garden was bathed in a golden light, the Duke took Isabella's hand. "Isabella, I want you to know how much your presence here means to me. You have brought a sense of peace and joy I thought I had lost forever." Isabella felt tears prick her eyes. "And you, Alexander, have shown me a depth of kindness and strength that I have rarely seen. I am honored to be here with you." As they stood among the roses, the world seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them and the promise of what could be. The connection between them was undeniable, and Isabella knew that no matter what they discovered about the past, their future together held endless possibilities. In the quiet of the garden, surrounded by the beauty and tranquility of the roses, Isabella and the Duke found solace in each other's presence. The secrets of Ravenswood Manor were slowly being unveiled, but more importantly, a new chapter was beginning, one filled with hope, love, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. Chapter 4. The Revelation. The manor was hushed, the only sound the occasional crackle of a log in the fireplace as Isabella sat in the library poring over yet another ancient tome. She had spent countless hours in this room, determined to uncover every secret Ravenswood Manor held. The night had settled deep, casting long shadows that danced with the flickering candlelight. As she reached for a particularly old volume on the highest shelf, her fingers brushed against something unusual. Intrigued, she pressed on the section of the shelf, and with a soft click, a hidden panel slid open, revealing a small compartment. Inside was a framed portrait, its surface dusty from years of neglect. Isabella carefully pulled it out and wiped the glass clean, gasping as she revealed the face of the woman within. Lady Rosalind stared back at her, the resemblance to Isabella startling. The same auburn hair, the same emerald eyes. It was as if she were looking into a mirror. A chill ran down her spine as she realized just how closely she resembled the Duke's lost love. The discovery left her with more questions than answers, and a sense of unease settled over her. Determined to understand more, Isabella took the portrait and made her way to the rose garden, where she knew the Duke often spent his evenings. The moon cast a silvery glow over the roses, making the garden look almost ethereal. She found the Duke standing by the stone bench where they had shared many conversations, his silhouette stark against the night sky. "Your Grace," Isabella called softly, approaching him. The Duke turned, his expression shifting from surprise to something deeper as he saw the portrait in her hands. "Where did you find that?" he asked, his voice a mix of sorrow and astonishment. "In a hidden compartment in the library," Isabella replied, holding the portrait out to him. "The resemblance is uncanny. Who was she to you, truly?" The Duke took the portrait, his eyes softening as he looked at Lady Rosalind's face. "She was my world," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "We were to be married, but she disappeared on the eve of our wedding. I searched everywhere, but she was gone without a trace. Her disappearance left a void in my life that I have never been able to fill." He paused, his gaze shifting to Isabella. "When I first saw you, I was struck by how much you resemble her. It was as if she had come back to me, and yet you are not her. You are your own person, and you have shown me a kindness and strength that has begun to heal wounds I thought would never mend." Isabella stepped closer, her heart aching for the pain the Duke had endured. "Alexander, I believe there is more to this than just a resemblance. There are forces at play here, things we do not fully understand. Tell me about the curse you believe you are under." The Duke sighed, looking away as if gathering the strength to speak. There is an old family legend, he began, that speaks of a curse placed upon the Ravenswood lineage. It is said that every generation will suffer a great loss, a punishment for the sins of our ancestors. I never believed it until Rosalind disappeared. Since then, I have felt the weight of that curse bearing down on me. He turned back to Isabella, his eyes searching hers. But you, Isabella, have brought light into my darkness. Your bravery and compassion have given me hope that perhaps this curse can be broken. Isabella took his hand, her touch gentle and reassuring. Alexander, I do not believe in curses that cannot be overcome. Together we can find the truth and put an end to this. I am not afraid, and I will stand by your side through whatever comes. The Duke's gaze softened, his hardened exterior beginning to crack under Isabella's unwavering support. You are a remarkable woman, Isabella. I have been lost for so long, but with you I feel I am beginning to find my way back. In that moment, under the moonlit sky and surrounded by the fragrant roses, the bond between them deepened. Isabella's courage and compassion were like a balm to the Duke's wounded heart, and for the first time in years he felt a glimmer of hope. They stood there for a long time, the portrait of Lady Rosalind between them a silent testament to the past, while the future, uncertain yet filled with promise, stretched out before them. Isabella knew that their journey was far from over, but with each step they took together, the shadows of Ravenswood Manor seemed to recede, replaced by the warm glow of a new beginning. Chapter 5. Love Conquers All. The night sky was a roiling mass of dark clouds, the air heavy with the promise of a storm. Ravenswood Manor stood silent and foreboding against the turbulent backdrop, its grand facade occasionally illuminated by flashes of lightning. The wind howled through the trees, making the rose garden sway and rustle ominously. Isabella stood in the center of the garden, her heart pounding. She had come here seeking solace and clarity, but the approaching storm mirrored the turmoil within her. The Duke had left her a note, asking her to meet him by the roses. She clutched the letter in her hand, feeling a sense of foreboding mixed with hope. As she waited, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was the mysterious stranger she had encountered at the ball Lord Sebastian Blackwood. His eyes gleamed with malice, and Isabella instinctively took a step back. "Lord Blackwood, what are you doing here?" she asked, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. He sneered, advancing towards her. "You are a fool, Lady Isabella. Did you really think you could uncover the secrets of Ravenswood and not face any consequences?" Isabella's heart raced. "What do you mean? What is your connection to all of this?" "Everything," he hissed. "My family and the Ravenswoods have been rivals for generations. That curse the Duke spoke of, it was my ancestors who placed it as revenge for wrongs done to us, and now I intend to finish what they started." With a swift movement, he pulled a dagger from his coat, the blade gleaming menacingly in the lightning's glow. Isabella's breath caught in her throat as he advanced on her. Before she could react, the Duke appeared, his silhouette stark against the stormy sky. "Leave her alone, Blackwood," he commanded, his voice filled with a deadly calm. Blackwood laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "So, the brave Duke comes to save his damsel. How touching, but it's too late, Ravenswood. Your fate is sealed." The Duke moved swiftly, placing himself between Isabella and Blackwood. "I will not let you harm her," he declared, his eyes blazing with determination. The storm broke with a fury, rain pouring down in torrents as thunder rumbled overhead. The two men clashed, the sound of their struggle drowned by the tempest. Isabella watched in horror, her heart in her throat as the man she loved fought to protect her. Blackwood lunged, but the Duke deflected the attack, the dagger slicing through the air. They grappled, the rain soaking them to the bone, their breaths coming in harsh gasps. Isabella knew she couldn't stand by and watch. Summoning her courage, she looked around for anything she could use to help. Her eyes fell on a heavy garden ornament and she rushed to lift it. With all her strength, she hurled it towards Blackwood. It struck his arm, causing him to drop the dagger with a cry of pain. The Duke seized the opportunity, disarming Blackwood completely and pinning him to the ground. "Your reign of terror ends here," the Duke said, his voice a low growl. Blackwood struggled, but the Duke's grip was unyielding. Just then, a flash of lightning illuminated the garden, and Blackwood's expression twisted with rage and defeat. "You think you've won, but the curse is nothing but a shadow of the past," the Duke interrupted, "and we will no longer live in its darkness." As if in response to his words, the storm began to abate. The rain slowed, and the clouds started to part, revealing a sliver of moonlight. Blackwood, realizing his defeat, slumped in the Duke's grasp. Isabella rushed to the Duke's side, her eyes filled with concern and relief. "Are you all right, Alexander?" He looked at her, his expression softening despite the exhaustion etched on his face. "I am, thanks to you, Isabella. Your bravery has saved us both." The authorities soon arrived, summoned by the commotion, and took Blackwood into custody. As he was led away, Isabella felt a sense of finality. The curse that had haunted the Ravenswood family for generations was broken, not by magic, but by love and courage. The storm had passed, leaving the garden glistening in the soft light of the emerging dawn. The roses, battered by the rain, seemed to stand taller, their colours more vibrant than ever. Isabella and the Duke stood together, their hands entwined. "Isabella," the Duke began, his voice filled with emotion, "you have given me hope and a reason to believe in the future. I love you and I cannot imagine my life without you." Tears filled Isabella's eyes as she gazed at him. "And I love you, Alexander. Together we can face anything." As the first rays of sunlight broke over the horizon, they kissed, sealing their promise of a new beginning. The shadows of the past had been dispelled, and the future stretched out before them, bright and full of promise. In the heart of the rose garden, surrounded by the beauty of nature and the dawn of a new day, Isabella and the Duke of Ravenswood found their happily ever after. Their love had conquered all, breaking the chains of the past and heralding a future filled with hope and joy. Chapter 6. A New Beginning. The days following the storm brought a new light to Ravenswood Manor. The estate, once shrouded in mystery and darkness, now basked in a warm, welcoming glow. The servants moved with a renewed sense of purpose, their faces alight with smiles. The air buzzed with excitement and hope, as if the manor itself had shed its old sombre skin and was reborn. Lady Isabella Harrington stood by the window of her room, looking out at the bustling activity below. The preparations for her wedding were in full swing. The gardens were being tended to with extra care, the ballroom was being decorated with fresh flowers, and the kitchen was a whirlwind of delicious aromas. It was as if every corner of Ravenswood Manor had come alive in celebration. Isabella turned at the sound of a soft knock on her door. Lady Eleanor entered, her eyes sparkling with happiness. "Isabella, my dear, everything is coming together beautifully. Are you excited for the big day?" A radiant smile spread across Isabella's face. "I am, Aunt Eleanor. It feels like a dream. I can hardly believe that soon I will be the Duchess of Ravenswood." Lady Eleanor embraced her niece warmly. "You have brought so much joy and light to this place, Isabella. The Duke is a changed man because of you." Isabella's thoughts drifted to Alexander, the man who had captured her heart. Their love had grown stronger with each passing day, and the bond they shared was unbreakable. As if summoned by her thoughts, there was another knock on the door. This time it was the Duke himself. "May I have a moment with Lady Isabella?" he asked, his eyes never leaving hers. Lady Eleanor smiled and excused herself, leaving the couple alone. Alexander stepped into the room, his presence filling the space with warmth. He took Isabella's hands in his expression tender and filled with love. "Isabella, these past days have been the happiest of my life," he began. "You have brought light into my darkness and hope into my heart. I love you more than words can express." Tears of joy welled up in Isabella's eyes. "And I love you, Alexander. You have shown me a strength and kindness that I never knew existed. Together, we have overcome so much, and I am ready to face the future with you by my side." Alexander leaned in, capturing her lips in a gentle, loving kiss. When they parted, he rested his forehead against hers. "I cannot wait to make you my wife, Isabella. You are my heart, my soul, my everything." The days flew by in a whirlwind of preparations and celebrations. The manor was a hive of activity as friends and family arrived for the wedding. The night before the ceremony, the estate was aglow with lanterns, and laughter filled the air as guests gathered for a grand feast. On the morning of the wedding, the sun rose bright and clear, casting a golden light over Ravenswood Manor. Isabella stood before a mirror in her bridal gown, a vision of elegance and grace. Her auburn hair was adorned with delicate flowers, and her emerald eyes sparkled with happiness. Lady Eleanor stood beside her, adjusting the final touches. "You look absolutely stunning, my dear. Alexander will be speechless when he sees you." Isabella smiled, her heart swelling with love and anticipation. "I cannot wait to see him, Aunt Eleanor. This is the happiest day of my life." The ceremony was held in the grand ballroom, which had been transformed into a floral wonderland. Guests filled the room, their faces beaming with joy. As the doors opened, all eyes turned to Isabella as she walked down the aisle, her gaze fixed on Alexander. The Duke stood at the altar, his eyes filled with emotion as he watched his bride approach. When Isabella reached him, he took her hands, and they stood together, their hearts beating as one. The vows they exchanged were filled with promises of love, loyalty, and eternal devotion. When they were pronounced husband and wife, a cheer erupted from the guests, and Alexander and Isabella shared a kiss that sealed their bond forever. The celebrations that followed were a joyous affair, with music, dancing, and laughter filling the air. As the sun set and the stars began to twinkle, Alexander took Isabella's hand and led her to the rose garden, now even more enchanting under the night sky. The garden, which had been the site of so many revelations and emotions, was now a symbol of their eternal love. The roses, blooming in vibrant colors, seemed to glow with an otherworldly light. They walked hand in hand through the garden, their steps unhurried, savoring the beauty and peace around them. "Do you remember the night of the storm?" Isabella asked softly, looking up at Alexander. He nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I do. It was a night of great fear and uncertainty, but it was also the night I realized just how much you mean to me. You saved me, Isabella. You saved us." Isabella smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "And you saved me, Alexander. Together, we can face anything." They continued their walk, the cool night air filled with the scent of roses. The future stretched out before them, filled with endless possibilities and the promise of happiness. In the heart of the rose garden, surrounded by the beauty and tranquility, Alexander and Isabella knew that their love had indeed conquered all. As they stood together under the stars, their hands entwined, they felt a sense of peace and fulfillment. The shadows of the past had been dispelled, and a new beginning awaited them, a beginning filled with love, hope, and the promise of a lifetime together. In the enchanted rose garden of Ravenswood Manor, their story had come full circle, and the future shone bright with the light of their enduring love.